And welcome to Forum 360, our program that is a global outlook of a topic with a local view. And we are excited to be a part of the Western Reserve Public Media, Public TV Fusion channel. Our cooperative production studio is with the Hudson Community TV folks, and we're seen on Hudson Community TV. Also heard on Rubber City Radio. And again, welcome to Forum 360. Our topic today is the history of Summit County. And we are exclusively dealing with the Summit County Historical Society of Akron, Ohio. And we are pleased to have Leianne Neff Heppner, the Executive Director, the current Executive Director of the Summit County Historical Society of Akron. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me here today.
And we see some of the artifacts we'll be discussing as we discuss history in Summit County. And Summit County came into existence in 1840, correct? And in 1840, Martin Van Buren was the President of the United States, and they had just had the panic of 1837 a few years before, which was a depression, a recession. And Akron and Summit County got involved in the Ohio and Erie Canal, and we'll discuss that. That kind of created the summit of the canal, and that's where we got the name Summit, correct?
Correct.
And so how have the different personalities that you've studied, and now that you're curating the Historical Society and the Executive Director, what are some of the key figures that you associate and our viewers can associate with Summit County history?
Well, there are many of them. So let's start with 1840 because that places us right at the Perkins Stone Mansion, the home of Colonel Simon and Grace Perkins.
Right.
And so Colonel Perkins was our state senator that formed the county at that time, but he had a lot of influence and a lot of money thanks to his father, General Simon Perkins, who helped fund a lot of different things and helped co-found the city of Akron. So you have to think of General Perkins, his son Colonel Perkins, but also you've got to pull in people that maybe you've not heard of before. Paul Williams, who is the co-founder of the city of Akron. You need to make sure that you're talking about Dr. Crosby. And there are going to be a number of businessmen that are going to come later in the 1840s, but these gentlemen figure heavily into the beginning of it, including some individuals from the War of 1812. And we can't forget that Akron wasn't the center of everything. It was one of the earlier towns, and so Hudson and some of the other neighboring communities, Bath, were even older than the town that ends up being the county seat.
And this was created out of Medina County and Portage County and a little bit of Stark County, maybe a bit of Cuyahoga County, but definitely we were formed, the majority of the county was formed from Medina County and Portage County, which were counties that preceded us. And this was almost like an economic zone that was, the canal zone was involved, the Ohio and Erie Canal. And how influential were the canal boats in the history of Summit County?
Well, really, it changes the whole landscape because before the formation of the Ohio and Erie Canal, there actually was a town that was very prominent where Akron is today, and that was Middlebury. And Middlebury had many mills and different things of that nature. There was another neighboring town named Cuyahoga Falls, but since the Ohio and Erie Canal did not go through those, they did not grow like Akron.
Right.
The other piece of it that's really important that you need to know about, besides just Ohio and Erie, we had the Pennsylvania and Ohio, which then cuts through Akron as well. And so we have these opportunity for more mills, more industry. And so this industry is what changes Summit County and provides those jobs that are necessary. Plus the transportation. I mean, we're able to get goods in and out, and so we're making money, and our atmosphere is able to change. So instead of just a wilderness, as Jack Gick mentions about the time period, now we're going to be able to become a refined town.
So the Perkins family, one of the lead families that got involved in Summit County and Akron and the region, they were involved in land acquisition. We have a display here. And could you identify what it looks bronze? the bronze instrument there?
So this is a really unique piece, mostly because it belonged to General Simon Perkins. He actually was a surveyor with Moses Cleveland when that area was established, and so he was able to see the lands, which are most of what Summit County is today, but he never lived here. So he was in Warren. This is called a circumferometer, and those that are surveyors are going to call me on that, but it's not a regular compass, and the reason for it is because it actually can measure horizontal lines as well. And so these were really popular in England, and the Perkins family did come from England. This is probably something that he learned from someone else in Connecticut before coming to the Western Reserve to help set up these areas in this community. So this is a pretty important piece. I mean, it is from prior to the 19th century.
Now, west of Middlebury community of Akron is the near west side, and there is the Portage Trail and the Copley Road. And in that vicinity, it's called Mutton Hill. And really, that's where the Summit County Historical Society of Akron found its headquarters, correct? And that's where you work from that area.
We do, and like you said, we're on that hillside named for the sheep that were grazing there, the Merino Saxony sheep that were shepherded by John Brown, and it wasn't until 1942 that we were given the John Brown house, and then able to buy the Perkinstowe Mansion in 1945. But because of that, we represent the founding family, even though, as I mentioned, General Simon Perkins never lived there.
Never lived there. And there are some other historical events that occurred in Summit County when it was still part of the Medina County or Portage County. But once it evolved into Summit County, industry, as you said, Leianne, how influential have the industrialists of, well, we talk about Ferdinand Schumacher and, of course, the rubber industry magnates. Discuss how they influenced Summit history.
It's so challenging to figure out where to start, but I think you have to go back to the beginning and look at agriculture. And so one of the individuals that you mentioned, Ferdinand Schumacher, he was made fun of by feeding people the food that was for horses and cows and people of that. You know, people are like, I can't believe you're feeding us animal food, but really today you look at the commercials and it's one of the healthiest things we can eat, right?
Exactly.
But that was founded in Akron. He made his money feeding the Union soldiers, and then he came back and then was able to make millions out of Akron. So you start with agriculture, and then you move to Lewis Miller, and Miller was involved in the mower and reaper scene.
Right.
And so he's this amazing philanthropist as well. He's involved in many different colleges, and he becomes the father-in-law of Thomas Edison. So that helps in terms of notoriety. But then you've got to bring in some other individuals. You think about John Seiberling and his straw board factory, which then his innovativeness, actually, I have to say, is probably what's going to lead his sons to become involved in the tire industry. But I can't jump just to FA and C.W. Seiberling for the tire industry without bringing the Perkins up again.
Right.
Because it's George Todd Perkins, that oldest son of Colonel and Grace Perkins, that is on the Board of Trade for the city of Akron. He brings Dr. B.F. Goodrich to town. And so Dr. B.F. Goodrich's facility starts by making bicycle tires and rubber hoses first. And then we're going to enter Firestone, and then we're going to go to the Goodyear. So we've set our sights for being the rubber capital of the world early on before 1900.
And we, again, are involved with, as you said, the canal zone, the railroads that were coming through. And we also have to look at the housing. Is it typical when we go down to the Summit County Historical Society headquarters, the Simon Perkins Stone Mansion, was that typical of that era, or what were some of the houses around that area where the workers were involved in the industrial, the line workers who were working in the industries?
Well, it really is interesting because in today's standards, the Perkinstowe Mansion might not look that large, but in actuality, across the street where they rented the home to John Brown between 1844 and 1854 was only 2 rooms and a loft. So that's what you're commonly seeing. And 1 mile outside of town is where the Perkins Mansion was placed. And so it has 11 rooms and 3 stories. I mean, that's pretty significant, made of stone as well. They brought in a mason specifically specifically from Britain to do the work. And so this is quite a large establishment. Later, what happens is George Todd Perkins encourages those living on East Market Street to move away from the factories and the industrialization, where they have these gorgeous homes, and come up onto the hill there and build these large houses. And so later, you know, around the 19-teens to the 1940s, you're going to start to see a larger number of houses crop up. And really, though, you can't compare them to Stan Hewitt, and that comes up between 1912 and 1915.
For the Cyberlink family.
So right, so you go from one side of Portage Path to the other. So we're at the end of Portage Path on the south side, and then if you go 2 miles down the road, you're going to hit Stan Hewitt, and then now we're talking about a 65-room expansive mansion, and that gives a clear view in modern society of what they think industrialism can lead to.
Now, Leianne, we have a website, summithistory.org, summithistory.org. Tell me what some of the things you can see when the people go to their computer or their cell phones and look up summithistory.org.
Well, we're really excited that we have a brand new website, so we're continuing to build it. You're going to find out about our events, what's going on at the Perkins Stone Mansion and the John Brown House, including our amazing rehabilitation of the John Brown House. So we have some images on there. We have history of those houses and a little bit of history of Akron, and we're continually adding to this. So we're going to be giving details about artifacts like what you see here, and adding information that's going to transition over time.
Now, there, of course, were people here before the Western Reserve, before the Connecticut Western Reserve, before it was Northwest Territory. You had the Native Americans, and there was a very interesting event that the Summit County Historical Society of Akron put on with the help of area like the Shaw Jewish Community Center and some of the other areas along the west side of Akron, where the Portage Trail caused the Indians to go back and forth between Lake Erie and the Ohio River. They'd use the Portage Trail. So tell us a little bit about that event and the Native Americans that lived here.
So the Portage Path Collaborative is an amazing opportunity for the Summit County Historical Society to work with others in our area. And that project was led by previous board chair Dave Lieberth for the Historical Society. And then, as you mentioned, we partnered with the Lippman Day School, who has a very special relationship with the Northern Cheyenne Nation. And so coming together, then we also drew in the Summit Metro Parks and the University of Akron. And then we had archaeologists and other individuals that have studied our native cultures come together to put together to exhibit, have talks, and then we celebrated the very first North American First Peoples Day on October 1st, and that was an amazing opportunity for the community to come together. They started at Portage Path Community Learning Center and then walked down Portage Path to the Summit County Historical Society's Perkins Stone Mansion, where the Northern Cheyenne Nation then did tribal dances and then could share a little bit about their culture. And in terms of the individuals that used to be in this area, there's been a lot of discussion and a lot of research because the peoples had moved so much earlier than at the time of Ohio settlement, although we do have a marker on our property that says that it's the western boundary of the United States.
Right.
And so if you were on the other side of the Portage Path, it was considered Indian land.
Right, Native Americans.
Yes.
We are talking today on Forum 360 with Leianne Neff Heppner, the Executive Director of the Summit County Historical Society of Akron, Ohio. We are in Forum 360 is involved with Western Reserve Public Television, the Fusion channels, and we're heard over Rubber City Radio and Hudson Community TV, our host production studio. We are involved in the Summit County Historical Society. We went all the way back to when Summit County, we discussed when it was founded back in 1840. Two other counties were formed that same week. We were the first, I think, March 3rd, 1840. 3 days later, Lake County to the north and Ottawa County to the west were formed. So there were 2 or 3 counties formed that particular month in 1840. But since then, there have been some really interesting personalities. We touched on a few. the Perkins family, and we also talked about John Brown, whose family also had involvement here in Hudson, where our studio is. And that family, John Brown eventually moved to Akron, the home that was not too far from the Perkins Mansion. So tell us about what renovation you've been able to do there, and what's some things that people will see about John Brown, the abolitionist.
Thank you so much. This project was brought together with assistance from the state of Ohio and many local donors. And what we found is that unfortunately the home's exterior had deteriorated to a point that it couldn't be repaired. And so we worked with a special craftsman, and he was able to identify for us a product that we could put on the house, which meant that we had to take all the siding off the home. We decided to not take it back to the two rooms that it was built in 1830, but to allow it to show the expansion of the home over years and the different people that used the home. What was exciting, though, is that they could take the quarter sawn West Coast cedar that we bought for the house, and they could cut it exactly the same shape as the siding that was on the house originally. So it did not change the look of the house, except for it's more aesthetically pleasing. And this phase that we are completing now is called Warm, Safe, and Dry, so that the building will be available for generations to come.
Now, there are opportunities for people here that living in Summit County to volunteer and assist you and your staff. Tell us about the type of volunteer program that Summit County Historical Society endeavors to pursue.
Well, we're always looking for volunteers, so thanks for mentioning that. There's opportunities to do research, whether it's for exhibits that we're putting out in the county building, the Ohio building, or our own properties, including Old Stone School, the Perkins Stone Mansion, and the John Brown House. But also it might be helping to set up exhibits. We're doing a new hands-on exhibit at the John Brown House, so it can be more tactile for the individuals coming, because we learn in so many different ways. And if you'd like to talk, I'd love to teach you how to give tours at our facilities. But if you don't want to talk, there's opportunities for you to help out in the office, maybe to welcome guests by assisting us in our gift shop. I need gardeners in the worst way. And we also need individuals that are willing to keep an eye on our sheep. We have volunteers that just walk the property to keep an eye on the sheep. And I can't tell you how many places can give you such a diverse opportunity.
It's amazing how Akron has become the pinnacle of many industries. And we touched base a little bit and talked about the rubber industry, and talked about the canal industry. We talked about the oats, Quaker Oats factory. But we also want to talk about some of the more modern things that Akron got involved with, and that's the lighter than air blimps and the Goodyear Aerodome, and now that was one of the most amazing things, part of Akron. Do you get involved in working with them?
You know, we do, and that's the exciting part about being at the Summit County Historical Society, because everything that's going around us happening is history. History isn't 100 years ago, it was just 5 minutes ago.
Right.
And so through the Historical Society, for educational purposes, we've been involved in the facility there at the air dock. They've allowed us to come in and give tours, and I've had a chance actually in the process. I've not had an opportunity to ride any of them, but I've seen all 3 of the new airships being built, and that's pretty exciting. And what we want to be able to do is educate others about it. We have discovery trunks that teachers can borrow, and so right now we're working with Eddie Ogden there at Goodyear Operations, so that we can make this trunk accessible, so it can go into the schools and the kids can pull this stuff out and say, wow, isn't this amazing? This is what's overhead that we see going by.
Now, there's a lot of infrastructure that has changed over the years, and let me pull up one of our examples from the collection. This is an exhibit that you brought. And what is this? And
that's a piece of sewer pipe.
This is a sewer pipe from circa what era was this?
Oh, this is probably from about the turn of the century.
Wow.
So we're looking between 1900 and 1910. What's amazing is that the sewer pipe that is in the New York subways actually were made here in Akron.
Some of the smaller collection exhibits here, these are nails. These are the type that maybe came in the early 1800s?
So actually, I can tell you those for about 1830. Those are
1830.
hand-cut nails that were pulled out of the John Brown house when we had to change the siding.
Very, very interesting. But tell me, how about the collections? What are some of the places? I know you work with the Akron Summit County Library System.
That's right.
And there's collections that the Summit Historical Society preserves. So tell us a little bit about that cooperation.
So it's a wonderful opportunity. When they restructured their library, they had a space available, and they've named it the Special Collections. And with a larger staff than the Historical Society and climate-controlled environment, we've actually moved all of our photographs, manuscripts, tapes, historic books to that location. And so as a researcher, you have a lot more hours that it's available to you. They're not on the shelves when you walk in, but a lot of it is available through their online database research, and so that you could go there if you wanted to write a paper or if you want to see historic photographs of Akron. Some of them are available on their online resource called Summit Memory.
One of our resources, of course, was Bookdale College, which later became, in the late 1800s, it became University of Akron. And we have the University of Akron now as also a resource, correct?
Absolutely, and we've partnered with them as well. Vic Fleischer at the Archival Services, and so what we do is we work together, Mary Plazo at the library and Vic there, as well as David Baker at the Psychology Archives, and we discuss the type of items that we collect and how we'll use them. In terms of three-dimensional collections, we actually store those on site at our location and in our archival, our artifact storage system, so that three-dimensional items are not going to be at the public library. If you're interested in those, then you contact the Summit County Historical Society office.
One of the resources that I learned so much from was the late professor, now George Nepper, who passed away this past fall, and we know that he taught at the University of Akron since the late 1940s. I had him as a professor of history, and I learned so much from him. He wrote about the city of Akron, the city of the Summit, county Summit, and he also wrote about Ohio and its people. These are a couple of the books that I was fascinated, but he really has contributed to not only the Summit County Historical Society, but he was a past president of the Ohio's Historical Society. And I was fascinated when I would go to Columbus to the Ohio Historical Society near the county fair, or the state fairgrounds there. You would see oftentimes Akron or Summit County history, even at the state level. Stan Hewitt, of course. So do you interact with other historical societies?
Absolutely. So we have different gatherings that we come together, and that's at a local level. It's called the Ohio Local History Alliance, and I've served on that board before, and I'll be serving again, and that involves the entire state. We also have some local gatherings for just Summit County with a little bit of Portage and Medina County involved too, and so we come together and we can talk with each other and share information. And so the Summit County Historical Society is just one of 18 historical societies in Summit County. So each of the communities, except for Akron, because we represent Akron, has their own little historical society. And I don't mean little in a bad way, little because most often they're all volunteer run, so they don't have full-time staff, and so their hours are smaller. Does not mean that their collections are, because there are amazing pieces all throughout the county.
And if you go to summithistory.org, summithistory.org, the Summit County Historical Society does have a list of all the cities, villages, townships, and you can click on. I thought that was a great way of accessing each one of the communities, because the history of each one of the communities is so unique, and every part of the community of Summit County seems to be alive with history.
It's very true. Summit County is a pinnacle of information and history in the making, and that's what's so exciting to be here right now.
Some of the bicentennials, I know the city of Norton had their bicentennial last year. Of course, Hudson, 1799, the city where we're doing our program today, very old community. But this is just representative of the type of cities in this community, in the townships. As you said, Bath, you have the Hale Farm, which
Correct,
is
through the Western Reserve
for the Western
Historical
Reserve
Society.
Historical Society, which is based in Cleveland, so we cooperate with each other. Well, thank you for telling us about the John Brown house. We are asking people if they'd like to look up the Summit County Historical Society, go to the website. It's very, very important that you find out more about what's going on at the Stone Mansion, Mutton Hill, and you can see all the collections. You can see the nice programs that are available. Again, that is the Summit County Historical Society of Akron, Ohio. And we were pleased to have Leianne Neff Heppner with us today, Executive Director. Please do visit the Historical Society at Mutton Hill. See the sheep, see the animals, see the gardens, the wall, the Portage Path. So it's at Portage Path and 162, State Route 162, it's Copley Road. But I want to thank you for being a part of our Forum 360, really bringing global outlook of history to a local view. And we thank you for your dedication and your cooperation with our station, Public Television, and Rubber City Radios and Hudson Community TV. Thank you for being a part. Thank you for bringing so many nice things about Summit County with us today. We thank you and have a good one. Take care. Thank you.
Forum 360 is brought to you by Electrical Impulse Communications, the John S. and James L. Knight Foundation, Hudson Community Television, the Rubber City Radio Group, an anonymous donor, the Jewish Community Board of Akron, Medical Mutual of Ohio, Blue Green, and Forum 360 supporters.